Let me introduce the expert of this session, Dr. Sanjay Patel, Associate Professor at SVNIT and one of the coordinators of this FDP. Uh, if I talk about his research interest, he has worked in the area of ultrasound assisted processes, then in nanomedicines, drug delivery systems, micro and milli-channeled assisted processes, and optimization of process through design of experiments. He has earned 6 research projects worth 85 lakhs from DST, T-Cube, so and so forth. He has till date 3 PhD students awarded and 4 ongoing, and 9 students MTech are pursuing. In the basket of his publication, he has 28 SCI journals publication, while 10 conferences at national as well as international level. He has delivered more than 20 expert lectures in various domains like design of experiment, ultrasound assisted processes, so and so forth. He is the reviewer of many journals like ultrasonic sonochemistry, chemical engineering research and design, chemical papers, chemical engineering and technology, and he is involved in consultancy with the industry which is involved in medical implants. So I request Dr. Sanjay Patel to take the session now. Please, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Megal, for my brief introduction to the participants. Good morning to all of you participants.
Good morning, sir.
So let me share my presentation here. Okay. Does my presentation is visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, please keep it on live flow mode.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good morning to all participants. Myself, Dr. S.R. Patel, and I'm going to give a talk on the role of ultrasound in crystallization. Okay, so the presentation actually I had made like that, since I want to say you about the ultrasound first, okay, and then I want to talk about the crystallization. Okay, so at the initial part of this presentation, I will talk on the ultrasound, how this ultrasound is helping the processes. Okay, it is about the general applications of the ultrasound, and then I will discuss something about the crystallization, what are the problems that are associated with the crystallization, and how to overcome that problems with the help of ultrasound. And then I will take some of the case studies to make you aware about how to use the ultrasound in this crystallization process. Okay, so let us begin the journey with the help of ultrasound first. Okay, when I talk about the ultrasound, okay, the name itself is containing one word before of sound, that is ultra. Okay, that means ultrasound is nothing but it is a sound waves. Okay, but sound waves at a frequency above the human threshold hearing range, that is around 16 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Okay, that sound waves are termed is ultrasound. And there are many applications where this ultrasound is being used for the different theme areas. If you can look into different theme areas, you can use ultrasound in the energy. You can use ultrasound in environment, health, food, for the different processes, okay, like food and dairy processing, to create nanomaterials, to create microspheres for biomedical applications, and some of the sonoprocessing applications in flavor and nutrients. And also one can use the ultrasound in wastewater treatment also. So there are many of the applications available for the ultrasound, okay. But we want here to use this ultrasound for a particular process that is termed as a crystallization also only, okay. How this use of ultrasound benefits the crystallization process. So let us start with some basic concepts about the ultrasound, okay. So when I talk about the ultrasound, it is nothing but the sound waves, okay. And the sound waves are consisting of an oscillating cycles of compression and expansion of medium through which it passes, okay. And you will see the that waves are in looks like a sine waves, okay. And these sound waves are generally called as a longitudinal waves, okay, because the medium and the direction of the travel of the sound is in the similar direction, okay. So when I say that this is depends on the medium, then the speed of sound is being affected by the medium through which the sound will propagated, okay. So if you can look at to here, if we'll use the different materials, okay, the speed of sound is also different, okay. So the sound is totally depends on the medium itself, okay. So if we can vary the sound frequency is nothing but number of cycles per second, okay. If we can vary this number of cycles per second, okay, we'll be having a different application of the sound waves, okay. If the sound frequency is very less than the 16 16 hertz, okay, the area is called as an infrasonic, where we can't hear that voice, okay, in infrasonic way, but the animal can hear that sound. But our human hearing range is between 16 hertz and 20 kilohertz, okay. So we'll say that the sound is sonic, okay, that are the sonic wave or sound wave, okay. And if the frequency of the sound waves is kept between the 20 kilohertz to 1000 kilohertz, okay, then the sound waves are termed as ultrasound waves or ultrasonic waves, okay. Further, if you can increase the frequency of the sound, okay, then beyond of this 1 megahertz, okay, then that area will be called as hypersonic waves, okay. So these are the different category of the sound based on the variation of the frequency, okay. And we will be we are interested to use this range of the frequency that is above the human hearing range, which is called as a ultrasound or ultrasonics, okay. And particularly this initially was used for the cleaning applications, okay, and welding of plastics, and for enhance the chemical reactivity, okay. The ultrasound was started to use, okay. So we will be using this range of the frequency of the sound, okay. So when this sound with this frequency will propagate through a liquid medium, okay, in form of the compression and rarefaction phases, okay, local pressure variation will occur. So during the compression phase, okay, liquid molecules are pressed together, and during the rarefaction phase, liquid molecules are stretched apart. And cavitation occurs at the spots where the vapor pressure in the liquid drops well below the vapor pressure. Okay, so initially, what you need is, if you want to form a cavity in the liquid, what you need to do is you need to bring down the vapor pressure of liquid just below of it, so that the bubbles can start to form. So if you look at to this, here in this picture, so we consider that the sound wave in a wave is in the form of sine waves, having consisting and one cycle of that sound wave consists of two pressure. Means one is a positive pressure and another is a negative pressure. Okay, so when I say when sound wave in this form, it will propagate through a liquid. Okay, negative pressure during the expansion wave of the cycle, if it will exceeds the positive pressure of the compression cycle, then the cavity will start to form. Okay, for an example here, okay, the cavity is formed. Okay, and then it is that cavities start to grow during the expansion cycle. Okay, and during the compression cycle, again it is being compressed and then expanded, and then again compressed and then expanded, and in this way it will grow to a certain critical size of that bubble, and then that bubble will collapse, because the pressure inside the bubble will no longer equilibrate the pressure of the bulk. Okay, so then after the imbalance of the pressure between the pressure inside the bubble and the bulk pressure, okay, cavity will collapse there. Okay, so this is the the formation of the bubble, and up to the collapse of the bubble, which term as the cavitation phenomena over here. Okay, so the same thing is being represented over here. Okay, that the formation of bubble started once the negative pressure will exceed the positive pressure on the molecules. Okay, and then it will grow over the few cycles of the sound waves, and when it will achieve its critical or resonance size, and then it will collapse. Okay, so when it collapses, it produces some energy, extreme energy, and that energy is utilized for the different processes to enhance their mass and heat transfer. Okay, so during this collapse, okay, what happens there is, when the bubble cloud that collapse, it produces intense local heating with a temperature of 5000 Kelvin and pressures of 10⁵ kilopascal. And during this, there are enormous heating and cooling rates, about 10⁻10 Kelvin per second within isolated submicron reactors. And if the bubble collapses symmetrically, okay, then it generates a very fast shock waves, and that shock waves are having the velocity approximately around 4000 meter per second, and also it generates the high pressure amplitudes, approximately 10⁶ kilopascals. And if the collapse occurs asymmetric, then it generates a high speed jet of liquid with a velocity higher than 100 meter per second, which is you can call is that as it forms a jet there when it collapses. So So that jets are called as a microjets over here, because the liquid are moving with the higher than the 100 meter per second velocity. Okay, so this is the phenomena which is being used for the different processes, okay, to accelerate the rate of chemical reactions, or to create a new reaction pathways, or even to generate different products from those obtained under conventional conditions. Okay, so when we talk about that, about the cavitation phenomena, then we should have knowledge about the cavitations also. So basically, there are two kinds of cavitations occurs. One is called as a stable cavitation, and another called as a transient cavitation. So in some literature, you will find the non-inertial cavitation and inertial cavitation. Okay, so non-inertial cavitation is the stable oscillations of a bubble. Means bubble is not bubbles is oscillating over the cycle for many times. Okay, and it doesn't go under the collapse. So that type of cavitation is called as a non-inertial cavitation, or you can say a stable cavitation. But during the successive progression of these cycles, it can convert its shape. Okay, for an example, you can see that over the period of time, you know, the circular bubble is converted in a square form, then again circular, and then square. Okay, and if you can change the, you know, frequency, okay, again you can able to change the shape of this bubble. Okay, so the bubble may transform from the circular shape to the hexagonal shape. Okay, and it will go like that, it will oscillate there. Okay, so such kind of cavitations are termed as a stable cavitation. Okay, but if the bubbles that is formed over the expansion cycle, okay, over the expansion cycle, and then it collapse, okay, during the few acoustic cycles. So from the if the bubble is formed and then collapse, okay, such type of bubbles are called as such type of cavitation is called as a inertial cavitation. Okay, so the formation and collapse of the bubbles. Okay, that means you can see this sine waves, which shows the sequence of inertial cavitations. Okay, in a negative pressure means if you can consider this as a upper one complete cycle. Okay, then this one complete cycle is experiencing compression, means pressure is increases, and at the other it will go through the negative pressure, means through the expansion also, where it will experience the negative pressure. Okay, so again it will experience the positive pressure and then negative pressure. Okay, so during the expansion cycle, this bubble grows. Okay, and during the compression cycle, this bubble is shrinking. Okay, so in this way the bubble grows and then it collapses. Okay, so such type of cavitation is called as an inertial cavitation, and this is the form of cavitation that that is having a great advantage to enhance the mixing processes, or to enhance the diffusivity in the processes. Okay, so we are interested to have you know, about to use the inertial cavitation, or you can say the transient cavitations. Okay, but there are the various types of cavitations available. Okay, means what you need to do to produce the cavitation is you need to bring the vapor pressure of the liquid well below its vapor pressure. Okay, so you can have the cavitation there. So that can be done by many ways, not only one process is there. Okay, Now, if the bubble is generated by the mechanical interactions between the sound waves, okay, and the bubbles in the liquid, then that type of cavitation is called as acoustic cavitation. Means this is just there are the materials, okay, term as a piezoelectric materials, okay, which can vibrate if you can supply the electrical energy to that, okay, and based on that vibration of the piezoelectric material, okay, sound waves are produced, okay. So here the mechanical energy is electrical energy is converted into the sound energy if such type of and thereby if the cavitation is produced, then such type of cavitations are called as acoustic cavitation, okay. And if you can if you can produce the cavitation by putting some restriction to the flow of fluids, okay. For an example of if you can put orifice or venturi across the flow of the fluid, okay, by this way also you can able to bring down that vapor pressure well below the vapor pressure of the liquid, and the cavitation will occur, okay, in that flowing fluid, okay. And if such if the cavitation is produced by means this, then that term is called as a hydrodynamic cavitation, okay. Similarly, there are the other ways. If the cavitation is produced by the photons of the high intensity that ruptures the liquid continuum, then it is called as optic cavitation, okay. And if the cavitation is produced by beams of elementary particles like a neutron beam that ruptures the liquid, okay, then it is called as a particle cavitation, okay. But here we will be using here the acoustic cavitation, okay, that is being produced with the help of electrical energy that vibrates the the piezoelectric materials, and by means and thereby the sound waves are produced, and in turn if it will pass through the liquid medium, it will generate the cavitation phenomena there, okay. So why we want to use the acoustic cavitation is because the bubble implosion is near the adiabatic, okay, and you can generate the extremely high energy there. When it collapses, it generates the temperature around 5,000 to 15,000 Kelvin, okay. And if the solution is there that contains the the water may generate the radicals also, okay, like water may dissociate their ions like H plus and OH minus ion, okay. Then it can be used for the radical generation also, and will be benefited for the sonochemistry, okay. And when it collapse, it emits the light also, okay. So one can use this light emission, okay, which is called as a sonoluminescence, okay, for the different kind of application. It generates the shock waves, shear forces, okay, etc. during the collapse of the cavitations. But most use of this acoustic cavitation is to produce the stirring effect, okay, to enhance the mixing, okay. In the vicinity of the crystal surface, this stirring effect causes a reduction of diffusion layer thickness and thereby increasing the liquid solid mass transfer, okay, because it enhances the mixing and thereby the mass transfer will get increased, okay. So it is termed as acoustic cavitation because these sound waves are being produced mechanically, okay. If you can see here, this is one kind of probe that is deep into the liquid, and sound waves are generated from the tip of this transducer, okay. So you can see that the bubbles are initially they are produced from the surface, and they goes towards some one specific pressure, okay, which is called as a focal pressure, or antinodes are generated. Okay, so these all are traveling in direction of towards the antinode pressure, and where the cavitations will occur. Okay, so these are the bubble streams that are being generated. Okay, and based on the intensity of the powers, you can able to generate the higher intensity of this vapor streams there. Okay, and this is the way by which the bubble gets collapsed in a symmetric collapse. Okay, the bubble is assumed as a spherical. Okay, and when the bulk pressure will high, okay, then the collapse will occur from the boundary of, or from the surface, okay, of this bubble. Okay, and therefore if you can change, the different liquids, okay, you will find there different cavitations phenomena in the different liquids, because the different solvents are having different properties. Okay, this is sololuminance study. You can see where the cavitations are collapsed. Okay, in water we are getting the good active cavitation collapse, and is compared to the acetones, because there are various factors occurring there in producing the cavitations also. Okay, so let us talk about then some of the reactors that are used to produce the acoustic cavitations. Okay, so basically there are two types. One is the Horn type of ultrasonics, and another is the Bach type of ultrasonics. Okay, in Horn type of ultrasound sonics, the sound waves are being produced through this probe. Okay, where and there is one generator which passes electrical energy, and the conversion of electrical energy to the sound will occur, and sound wave will pass through this probe, and then it goes to the some reaction mixture. Okay, and in Bach type, the transducer are attached to the bottom of plate, or wherever the requirement of a particular application that can be attached. Okay, and by that one can supply the sound waves from the surface of that plate to the some solution that can be filled there in the bath. Okay, so and the volume, if you want to if you want to increase the efficiency, okay, the bath volume will depends on the number of transducer they are to be placed. You can increase the volume also by attaching the more number of transducer there. Okay, there are other forms of reactors you are also, that is called as, you can attach the two different transducers to the surface of any reactor. Okay, and you can keep there the different frequency of that sound. Okay, if there are two frequencies of the transducers are attached to the the reactors, then that type of reactors are called as a dual frequency reactor. Okay, and also you can increase the number of transducers which can be attached to the surface of the metal, and you can keep the solution in a quartz tube. Okay, and also you can keep the different frequency of the sound by using the different transducers there. Okay, for the as per the requirement. Okay, so you can generate the triple frequency flow shell also in that case. Okay, so these are some of the reactors that are available. Okay, and we now have the knowledge about the ultrasounds, and how that ultrasounds is when it propagates through the liquid. In liquid, it produces the cavity, and that cavity then expansion of that cavity occurs, Okay, means cavity grows and then collapse, and when that cavity or the bubble that collapse, it produces extremely high energy. Okay, it produces hotspots there. So that we want to utilize here in the crystallization process. Okay, so let me talk about now the crystallization, and then we will couple ultrasound with the crystallization. Okay, so initially you should know aware about some of the basics related to the crystallization. Okay, now crystallization is the most important separation and purification process in the industries like pharmaceuticals and the fine chemicals. Okay, and in these industries, the importance of the study of crystallization operation has been increased, and over the past several decades, more attention has been given on the study of factors that control the crystallization process. And the level of control of crystallization process requires some basic understanding. Okay, like one should know about how the nucleation and growth of the crystals occurs. Okay, and one should know about what are the types of equipments that are used for the crystallization. So what are the actual problems associated with this crystallization? Okay, so crystallization is the last step. Okay, last step of any manufacturing plant which is having the product in the solid form. Okay, and this is the last step or last process that converts particular particular product from the liquid phase to the solid phase. So when the product comes at the in form of the solid, some of the properties that are required, okay, like the crystal size, then its distribution, and the morphology of that crystal, or you can say the shape of crystals. So for any crystallization process, size and its distribution and shape of the crystal is the crucial quality criteria. Okay, so in a general, nucleation occurs very randomly, and therefore the quality of these produced crystals are uncontrolled, and accordingly the outcoming crystals have an untailored crystal size, which are unevenly distributed and non-uniform in shape. Okay, and in conventional crystallization techniques, a solution which contains the materials to be crystallized is supersaturated by removing the thermal energy or by applying the thermal energy to the system, and then after getting some generating supersaturation, some of seeding is done. Okay, that is about the conventional process. But there are some problems associated with this seeding also, that the seeding cannot be done in very uniform, and therefore the nucleations will occur non-randomly. Okay, and if the nucleation will occur very non-randomly, then we will get the uneven size crystal distributions. Okay, so these are the problems that are associated with the crystallization. Okay, and the main driving force for any precipitation is the rapid and high supersaturation, because the crucial crystal properties like their size, morphology, and purity, okay, they are depending on the rate, magnitude, and uniformity of the supersaturation generated during the process of crystallization. Okay, so one can control the supersaturation, or one can generate the supersaturation uniformly. If the supersaturation is generated uniformly, uniform nucleation will be started, and thereby the final product will also be uniform. Okay, so there are four main methods that are being used to generate this supersaturation. Is the temperature change. One can change the temperature, or one can evaporate the solvent, or one can produce the supersaturation by reacting to components by chemical reactions. Okay, and one can generate the supersaturation by changing the solvent composition, or you can say by adding the third component. Okay, so based on this, the overall crystallization process is classified if the solubility of solute is changed by evaporating a solvent, then it is called as evaporative crystallization. Okay, and if in the solution, if that solubility is altered with the help of change in temperature, then it is termed as a cooling crystallization. If the solubility of solute in solvent is changed by adding an anti-solvent, then it is called as an anti-solvent crystallization. Okay, and if the supersaturation is generated with the help of chemical reaction, then it is called as a reactive crystallization. Okay, so there are the main the various crystallization process available. Okay, and basically they are classified based on how the solute solubility in a solvent is being reduced. Okay, we want here to know some of the basics. Okay, for each of that crystallization processes, the most common step is the nucleation. Okay, so what is nucleation? You can say that nuclei, they are the first form of embryos of solid phase, and they can be formed by clustering and aggregation of the molecules or ions in the solution to a size at which such entities become viable. Means they will grow rather than they will dissolve. Okay, so means this is nothing but the molecules are aggregated and form some cluster. Okay, and when it forms a cluster, that cluster will be termed as a nuclei. Okay, but that cluster should be come in a visible range. So when that cluster will come in a visible range, then the process of forming nuclei is called as a nucleation. Okay, so there are another various categories of these nucleations. The primary nucleation, in primary nucleation it is homogeneous nucleation, then heterogeneous nucleation. There is a secondary nucleation, okay, which can be initiated by the produced crystals or some disturbances in the reactants, reactor wall, or etc. Okay, or by shearing effect, etc. Okay, so what we know is, to understand the crystallization process, the two definitions should be understood very clearly. Okay, that is about is induction time. Okay, now what is the induction time? The definition is like the time elapsed between the creation of supersaturation and the appearance of crystals. Okay, for an example, if the supersaturation is generated, doesn't mean that the nucleation will be proceed. Okay, so we need to find that point in the supersaturation region, okay, where the nucleation will start. Okay, so there is a time difference in the generation of supersaturation and the appearance of the crystal. Okay, that time difference is known as the induction time. If you can look at to this graph, okay, this is the A shows the point of supersaturation. Okay, and then it goes to some B days where there is still the that concentration remain constant. Okay, and we will find here, you know, some clustering or aggregation of the molecules. Okay, but this cluster is not visible here. Okay, and after certain time it will become visible at the point of B. Okay, so the time required from this point of A in the supersaturation to the point of B where the nuclei are formed is called as a induction time. Okay, and then once the nuclei are formed, okay, there is some you know, latent period, up to which the concentration remain constant, and then the growth of crystal occurs by decreasing its concentration up to the, the solubility limit of that concentration in a solution. Okay, so one can think on this, if I can reduce down this induction time, okay, I will able to enhance the productivity in short period of time. Okay, and there is another definition that is used in the crystallization is about the metastable zone width. Okay, so if you can look at to this graph, okay, let me tell you about what is metastable zone width. Okay, so actually it is defined as the region between an equilibrium saturation curve and the experimentally observed point of supersaturation when the nucleation occurs spontaneously. Okay, so if you can look at this curve, there are two curves you can see on this concentration temperature diagram. Okay, now suppose I do have the solubility curves that is represented here by the solid line. Okay, or you can say this is the maximum possible of solute that can dissolve into the solute, or you can say it's a saturated concentration. Okay, and then this curve is being plotted there. Okay, so anything above this you will enter into the supersaturation region, and below of this is the under solubility region. Okay, so what you can do is in this case, if you can start with this point where the temperature is T0, because the solute dependency is on their solubility depends on the temperature, that is with respect to the temperature. And suppose here the B, that is the solubility of any solute in a solvent. Okay, and that solute has to be crystallized out. Okay, so what we can do is we can reduce its solubility by removing the thermal energy, or you can say reducing the temperature. Okay, so there is a requirement of the temperature needs to be decreased. Okay, till the that nucleation will start. Okay, in the region at the point in the supersaturation, first nuclei will be generated. Okay, so we will put here one dot there. Okay, and if you can have a different concentration, okay, then you will have a different nucleation points. Okay, and then join this curve. So you can say that this is a nucleation curve and this is a solubility curve. And the difference between this, the temperature difference between these 2 points, solubility point and the nucleation point, is termed as a metastable zone width. Okay, so you can see here one can target to reduce down this metastable zone width to proceed the the early nucleation, or you can say to proceed the to increase the supersaturation region very rapidly. Okay, so one can go with this also by reducing the metastable zone width. Okay, so the use of ultrasound in crystallization is generally being used to alter this induction time and the metastable zone width. Okay, so if the ultrasound is being used, both of this induction time and metastable zone width are being reduced. Okay, so one can generate the crystal at the very low supersaturation itself, and the time required, since the induction time is being reduced, the time required to get yield will also be decreased. Okay, so to do this, here the ultrasound is used. Okay, now the first study on the use of ultrasound in crystallization, okay, was reported in 1927, but at that moment of time there were no proper ultrasound devices, so the inconsistent results were obtained. Okay, but more attention on this, the sonocrystallization with or the use of ultrasound in crystallization is attended in the last decade. Okay, due to the advancement in the ultrasonic equipment and their positive effect in the crystallization process, mostly for the synthesis of pharmaceuticals, proteins, organic compounds, and inorganic compounds. Okay, so when the ultrasound is used in the crystallization, basically it alters the three things there. One is it can change the supersaturation, it can change the induction period, and it can change the metastable zone width. Okay, so you can see in some of the literature that is already been proven about the induction time. If you can look at to this graph, you can see that the induction time of this roxithromycin drug is being greatly reduced. Okay, so here this is the graph of without ultrasound, and this is the graph of induction time with the ultrasound. Okay, so if the ultrasound is being used, the induction time is greatly reduced at the different supersaturation level. Also, if the supersaturation will increase, then also the induction time will get decrease. Okay, so therefore one can combine this ultrasound, okay, with the supersaturation to get a specific size of the particles there in the crystallization process. Okay, so one can this enhance the ultrasonic energy also by changing the amplitudes of sounds. Okay, so if you can see that the acoustic power, okay, or ultrasound power is increases with increasing the the amplitude. Okay, so if the ultrasonic energy can be increased, then what will happen to that induction period that is being presented over here? Okay, if you can look at to this curve, then the induction period is decreases greatly with increase in the ultrasonic energy also. Okay, so what we conclude with the use of ultrasound in a crystallization is that the ultrasound provides a means of reducing the induction time and metastable zone width and dramatically increasing the nucleation rate in crystallization experiments. Okay, and therefore we may take some of the case studies to understand this. Okay, where the induction time and the metastable is reduced, and finally tailor the particle size that are as per the needed by the market. Okay, so let me focus on first study. Okay, which is about the anti-solvent crystallization of drugs. Okay, if you can think about the problem that are associated with the drugs here. Okay, so drugs are classified mostly in class 1, class 2, class 3, and class 4. Okay, and the class of second class. Okay, in this category, actually the drug is having a very low solubility. Okay, and therefore if that are drugs are having a low solubility, then this class is having a limited bioavailability of drugs. Okay, and therefore we need to enhance the bioavailability, okay, by enhancing the solubility of drug in intestinal fluids. Okay, so bioavailability means the percentage of the quantity of drug that is absorbed as compared to its initial quantity of doses. Okay, and it was reported by some of the literature that if one can increase the surface area of the particle size, okay, then the solubility of that particles are being increased. Okay, and therefore why not to target on this drugs which can be produced in a nano range to increase the bioavailability. Okay, so actually there are the various the processes that are available to produce the nanoparticles. Okay, so if you can look at to the nanonization techniques, okay, now there are basically two approaches. Okay, now top down approach and bottom up approach. From top down approach, there are the various methods that are used. Okay, but these techniques are not efficient due to the high energy input, and sometimes it degrades the product also. Okay, whereas in the case of the bottom up approach, okay, you have very good technologies. Okay, you can produce the nanoparticles through spray drying, spray freeze drying, supercritical fluid technology. Okay, and there is one technology also which is termed as an anti-solvent crystallization. Okay, so one can use the crystallization, anti-solvent crystallization in bottom-up techniques. Okay, because it's a very simple and it is a cost-effective and it is very easy to scale up. Okay, means one has to take the solution and one has to find the anti-solvent which can reduce the solute solubility in that solvent. Okay, so in a solution, if the third component that is added and that solution is mixed, then the solute will be precipitated out. Okay, and one of the best benefit of the use of this anti-solvent precipitation over here in the drug case, particularly for the class 2 drugs, okay, where there is a low aqueous solubility, we can use the water as an anti-solvent in this case. Okay, and when we use the water as an anti-solvent, okay, one can use the ultrasound waves very easily. Okay, because the cavitation occurs in the water occurs in very good phenomena of cavitation is being generated there. Okay, so the use of ultrasonic waves in crystallization is used in a laboratory scales because it can generate very rapid and uniform nucleation throughout the sonicated volumes, which leads to smaller and uniform size particles, and it reduces the agglomeration of the particles and also controls the number of nuclei. Okay, so this can be achieved, this two criteria can be achieved by simply generating there the or simply controlling the cavitation phenomena. Okay, and one can also one can also alter the crystal habit, or means one can also change the crystal shape by using the ultrasound. Okay, because this use of ultrasound increases and decreases the growth rate of certain crystal faces. Okay, so the factors which affects on this particle size reduction of the drugs mostly are the ultrasonic power intensity, then the ultrasonic addition time, okay, and the time at which the sonication is applied. Okay, so mostly this ultrasonic power, okay, when it is been increased, okay, the particle size was greatly reduced. Okay, and that was sometimes this phenomena was attributed to increase in erosion effect on the surface of large crystals, okay, due to increase in the ultrasonic power. Okay, and therefore at the high power crystals can also agglomerated. Okay, and also this ultrasonic time and ultrasonic time and this time at which the sonication is applied, they are having also good control on the particle size. But all of this can be controlled by controlling the induction time and metastable zone width. So the most effect of the presence of ultrasound in anti-solvent crystallization is the control on the induction time and the metastable zone width. Okay, so one can give the ultrasound to the crystallization just to initiate the seeding process. Okay, or one can give the ultrasound in a continuous manner, or one can give the ultrasound to the process in a pulsed manner, means on-off system. Ultrasound is given 30 second and 30 second off, and then 30 second on, like in the ratio of time. Okay, this pulse sonication can also be given to influence the crystal size. Okay, so if you can look at the study around this class 2 drug, okay, you can see one drug is used that is known as a telmisartan. This is a poorly water soluble drug, okay, and comes under the biopharmaceutical classification system 2, okay, which is having very low solubility, very low aqueous solubility, and it is used in the medication of hypertension. You can see the aqueous solubility is very low, 9.9 microgram per ml. Okay, and the initial, you know, the shape and the distribution of that crystals is very high. Okay, so since the class 2 drug is there and this is having low aqueous solubility, so one can think to use the water as an anti-solvent. Okay, and why not to dissolve this, you know, dissolve this telmisartan in some organic solvent. Organic solvent here it is taken as a DMSO, in which it is dissolved. Okay, okay, so and that solution is taken into some syringe, and the anti-solvent or water is kept in this crystallization reactor. Okay, so one can add this, you know, the solution to simply the water itself. Okay, and then the mixing can be enhanced with the help of ultrasound to produce the nano-sized telmisartan particle. Okay, so ultrasound is applied here to mix with water and this anti-solvent. Okay, to form the nano-range telmisartan particles. And at the end, what you can observe that the particles, okay, that were very, very uniform in size, and the particles of telmisartans were obtained in nano range. Okay, so these are the you can see here the first is, you know, the raw telmisartan. Okay, and when the ultrasound was not applied in the anti-solvent crystallization, you can see the morphology that is not predictable. But when the ultrasound is added, see the shape of the crystals are drastically changed at the nano range size, and the morphology also you can see that morphology is very uniform in size. Okay, in shape, sorry. So and the size distribution also you can compare over here. Okay, this is the distribution is very narrow in case of the use of ultrasound. Okay, as compared to without ultrasound. Okay, so this is where you know, the one can produce the drug nanoparticles. Okay, to enhance their dissolution rate. Okay, and here the water is used as an anti-solvent. Okay, so why not to use and both, means organic solvent as an anti-solvent, and you know, the solution is also in a organic solvent. Okay, so here one example is taken. Okay, regarding the clopidogrel hydrogen sulfate. Okay, when this two organic solvent and organic anti-solvents were mixed together. Okay, if the ultrasound was not added to that crystal, you can see the crystals are generated in a spherical shape, and the size of that crystals were very, very large, around 143 micrometer. Whereas when in the same experiment, when the ultrasound was added to that, you can see the produced crystals are very uniform in the size as well as in the morphology also. Okay, and you can see the change in their release profile also, that in 20 minutes, if you can compare the release profile of these two drugs, okay, you can find that in presence of ultrasound, okay, more than 70% of release is occurring in 20 minutes of time as compared to this anti-solvent crystallization, or as compared to the purely available clopidogrel drug. Okay, so one can think in this direction to produce to alter the size and shape of the end crystals. Okay, there is another the study where the ultrasound is used to enhance the yield of the product. Okay, so you might have heard about the paneer. Okay, paneer actually made from the milk. Okay, so after paneer is made from the milk, okay, that the water that is remaining is thrown away. Okay, so when it is discharged to the environment, actually it increases the high level of BOD and high level of COD there. Okay, so it creates an environmental problem, okay, when it discharges simply as it is. Okay, and some this liquid that is thrown away in the environment, it contains a few components. The components term as a lactose protein, okay, which we term as a whey protein, okay, and fat and minerals. Okay, so from the literature, it was found that the responsibility of the enhancement in the BOD of that fluid is due to the lactose content of that particular liquid that is thrown away. Okay, so in that, lactose is remaining in the way of 5% to 5% to 6%. Okay, so it was from the literature, it was found that if you can recover that lactose out of that thrown away, the liquid, this BOD and COD can be reduced by 80%. Okay, so the problem is well defined, that one should recover lactose out of that solution before it has to be discharged, okay, to reduce the environmental problem. And the recovered lactose can be used as a substrate for making the tablet of the drug also. Okay, so one can generate the the value out of that waste. Okay, so here it is thought of, why not to use the crystallization process, okay, to take out the lactose from that whey, that is, or the liquid that is thrown away. Okay, so simply one bath was taken. This is just to show you. The bath was taken in which the solution was taken that contains the lactose, and here already it is an aqueous solution, so we need to think about the anti-solvent that has to be added over here is about the organic solvent. Okay, so organic solvent here added was acetone, okay, to take out that solute or take out the lactose from that water. Okay, and this was done with the help of anti-solvent crystallization. Okay, and in which the ultrasound is also provided at the fixed frequency and at the different power. Okay, so if you can think over here, if you can look at to this picture, okay, this is the curve. These are the sonicated samples. Means this is with the use of ultrasound, and the another trend is goes for the without use of the ultrasound, okay, for the recovery of the lactose. Okay, and if you can compare these two processes with and without of ultrasound, you can see that 85.26% of lactose can be recovered in 8 minutes of time. Okay, whereas whereas if ultrasound is not used, then it gives only 46.69% of lactose recovery. Okay, so lactose yield can be enhanced. Okay, and also the produced lactose was having less agglomerated form. Okay, for an example, the you can see here when simply anti-solvent was done. Okay, this is a pure marketed lactose, and this is the lactose that is recovered by simply anti-solvent. Okay, by mixing only acetone and the water. Okay, and this is the lactose that was obtained by adding the ultrasound in the anti-solvent crystallization. Okay, so you can see the difference in between this lactose. Okay, here they are having, in the non-sonicated sample, they are agglomerated form. Their shape was also non-uniform. Okay, whereas in this case, when the ultrasound is applied, okay, the most of the the crystals were in their regular their shaped, uniform shaped, and their size was also in uniform. Okay, so and also the morphology get drastically transformed from their tomahawk shape to the needle like crystals or a rod like crystals. Okay, so the ultrasound, okay, use of ultrasound in anti-solvent crystallization actually tailors the shape of the crystals also, and actually controls the crystal size also. Okay, you can see here the recovered lactose having uniform and narrower crystal size distribution as compared to the markedly available crystal having non-uniform and a very uneven size distribution. Okay, so out of this study, we can say that lactose recovery by sonocrystallization led to early crystallization of lactose with 83.01% recovery as compared to the recovery by non-sonicated samples, which was only by 38.96%. Okay, and the enhancement in the percentage recovery with the use of ultrasound was around 44%. Okay, that achievement is done simply by using the ultrasound in the crystallization process. There is another type of crystallization is also there, which is called as a reactive crystallization. Okay, so where the supersaturation is generated just by reacting the reacting component. Okay, so there are two reactants which reacted together to give you the product. Okay, so products, if you want to take out the product in a solid form, okay, that product has to come out that's first in a supersaturation region, okay, and it has to achieve that achieve that induction time, okay, and cross that metastable zone width. Okay, so these are the requirement of any solutes that has to be come out from the solvent. So here the supersaturation is being generated with the help of reacting these reactants. Okay, so for an example, one reaction is sodium sulfate and strontium chloride hexahedrous was reacted together to give you the strontium sulfate. Okay, and gives the water also and NaCl also. So the product here was the strontium sulfate, which is the only source for the to take out the strontium for their applications. Okay, so here a thought was given to use the reactive crystallization with the help of ultrasound. What will happen to the yield of strontium sulfate? Okay, and what will happen to the size distribution to this strontium sulfate? Okay, so the schematic diagram is very simple. There should be some crystallization in which we should pass out some reactants that can be reacted to reacted in that reactor, crystallizer reactor. Okay, and to enhance that reaction, one can put here the probe type of sonicator through which the sound waves can be applied. Okay, so this was the experimentation that was done. Okay, and if you can see the the last this effect of the induction time of this strontium sulfate. Okay, with increase in the amplitude, what you can observe that induction time is greatly being decreased. Okay, that means if the induction time is decreased, means instant nucleation will occur, more number of nuclei will be generated. Okay, if more number of nuclei will be generated, then one can get the lesser particle size. Okay, so we can compare that with the other with the help of EDT also. Okay, if additives are added, then the induction time was increased, whereas in this case it was decreased. Okay, if you can look at to the distribution of that strontium sulfate with and without of ultrasound, you can see the change in this. Okay, you can see the without ultrasound, the distribution was uniform, but there was a broader distribution. But when the ultrasound was applied, okay, the distribution was very narrower. It becomes very narrower and uniformly distributed. Okay, and also to know the effect of ultrasound with the increase in the amplitude. Okay, what will happen to the diffusivity in that case? The diffusivity was calculated by some equations. Okay, so we have run one model. This is a simulated model, and that was compared with the experimental values, and out of that the diffusivity was calculated. And you can see here in this table, okay, with increase in the the amplitude of sound, okay, actually the diffusivity is increased, okay, by 1.087 times, and with increase in the amplitude, this has increased drastically from their initial value. Okay, so these are the diffusivity, but look at to here, just by applying the ultrasound, okay, diffusivity gets increased, okay, based on the ultrasonic energy that is being provided in the reaction system. Okay, so finally the yield of strontium sulfate was also compared with and without. You can see in this graph at a given supersaturation level, okay, the yield of that strontium sulfate was drastically enhanced in case of use of ultrasound there as compared to the without ultrasound. So at the end, what we conclude as that sonocrystallization has become a prominent method to prepare organic crystals with a desired size and size distribution. Also, ultrasound provides means of reducing the induction time and metastable zone width, and increases the nucleation rate in crystallization experiment. The modification of crystallization parameters yields micro and nanometer size crystals, and that are of particular interest to the pharmaceutical industry due to the increase in the viability associated with the particle size reduction. Okay, and at the end we can conclude that the advantages of using ultrasound in crystallization, okay, are indisputable, and therefore its role in the crystallization process will grow as the parameters involved in the overall process are better controlled. So by concluding this remark, okay, I will end this session, and I would like to acknowledge my faculty members and some of my students. Thank you for listening me.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. Now the session is open for the questions. Okay. Yes, there is one question. On chat box, sir, it is there.
Okay, let me look into that.
Yeah.
Okay. The question which is asked by the Prasad sir is, what are the current challenges in application of ultrasound to crystallization, where the researchers should focus on? Okay. Actually, you can see mostly the ultrasound is being used at the laboratory scale. So somebody may target to convert this, lab scale to the commercial scale. Okay. And also there needs to, there needs to be given more attention on the study of, the variation of, the bubble size by controlling the frequency of ultrasounds. Okay. That should be given, and mostly it is being, mostly it is being done by many researchers. They are making, the this batch process of crystallization in a continuous process. Okay, that are the some of the challenges are there. Okay, so you need to integrate the sonic equipments in such that you can make the continuous crystallization process. Okay.
Any other question?
I hope that the participants are from the different disciplines. Also, they might have come first time in the crystallization. That may be a one possibility that the questions are not there.
But this, sir, sonication, if we recall, it has found application in mechanical field also, mechanical engineering, that our department, mechanical engineering department is using. Even in civil also, some faculties are focusing on that. Chemistry, they are using for reaction purpose. So the application is bit, having chemical engineering focus, but the principles of sonication that are applicable in every field. I hope if they are, having an idea about this concept, then they can use this concept in their field. So, thank you, sir, for the conceptual and interesting session as yes. So this will give us an idea how and where the applicability of sonication can be. So thank you for the session.
Okay,